This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays because Sunday's the day to stream. On Sundays. Hope you're all doing well this morning. Oh, I have a bit of a headache. I imagine it won't be helped by whatever we're about to listen to next, because the label is what you pay for on this one, apparently. Checking the boxes, race, identity, and college admissions. You ever read a mystery novel and they give away the ending in the first page? Now, which makes me think there's got to be a twist to this, right? There's got to be something like they're going to, I don't know, argue against that notion as being a checkbox kind of situation, or maybe they'll take a completely different path from what I imagine. I don't know, because the only other alternative is that it's become so normalized and so nonchalant about what actually matters in education that this is as honest a title as you could ask for, which I guess I would appreciate in a way without, beating around the bush or anything. So I don't know. I saw the title and I was like, okay, I either this is a commentary against this kind of practice, or it's an unabashedly unapologetic confession of it, or something else. I don't know. I should also mention that somewhere in the description of the video, either the subtitle or otherwise, it mentioned that these are independent schools, or this concerns independent schools, which means conceivably, if they are truly independent and not accepting any federal funding, that they are not subject to certain federal restrictions on, race discrimination, gender discrimination, and so on. So technically, possibly, if they are doing what the title says they're doing, they're not breaking the law, technically. But we're not necessarily just talking about the law here. We're talking about the principle of what should happen to people and how people should be treated, and so on. And also, I'm assuming, because I haven't watched it yet, we're talking about American colleges here. This could be a video from Canada for all I know, so we'll find out. Either way, before we get to all that, who is joining me on this lovely Sunday morning? Matt Barnes, Some Young Nation, Corey Suzuki, Noah Asensio, Bridget, Swirl Blue, Arc210, Jamie Melquist, Kiever Dam also with Zalbla's, let me see, GoFundMe. I'm putting that up at the top there. Yes, if you happen to have a couple of spare extra dollars, our friend Zalbla, longtime friend of this and many other shows, needs a little more help to get to her goal to start a new life after some hardships. So links in the top there in the chat. Go take a look if you would. And if you're able, please consider donating. Let's see. The Useless Rebel, Shortline 614. Who else? Viror of Ashmedai. Let's see. This is Kyle. Let me get to that real quick. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. We're all in our places with bright shining faces. Hell Triangle. And I think that's everybody that I see. If I've missed you, or if you're lurking, well, in the latter case, I can't help you. But if I missed you, I do apologize. Check your logic. Hello. All right. So with all that being said, let's get into this. This is a panel discussion with several people coming in with Zoom calls and so on. So I have tried to up the audio, but as each individual has their own setup, your mileage may vary. This clocks in at just over 44 minutes, or I should say just under 45. I am only going to go for approximately an hour and a half in real time, unless there is a compelling reason to do otherwise. So, with all that being said, let's begin.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay. I hope it's not like that the whole time. You guys hear that? If you can't hear that, boy, oh boy. Let's see. What do we got? Kimberly Romero, Elon University. Jeremy Branch, Pennsylvania. Okay, so I'm Penn State. Penn State? Is Penn State a independent school? T. Peaches Valdez. Peaches. Catherine Box. And Tiffany George, Brown University. Okay, well, there you go. You guys hear that all right? Or loud as hell trying? Yes, that was loud. If that keeps up, I will try to turn it down on my end. But let's find out.
My name is Catherine Box, and we welcome you to our session, Checking the Boxes, Race, Identity, and College Admission.
Okay, so I've turned it down on my end just a little bit for my own sake, if nobody else's. If that is too quiet for people now or something, let me know, and I'll just, bear with it. Hopefully, maybe her sound will modulate at some point. Don't know. Let's see. Hell Triangle says, let me get that on the screen because I can do that. No, Penn State receives a small amount of state funding. Aha. Okay. I guess we'll find out. Let's see. Arc210 says there's Penn and there's Penn State. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what the differentials are here. Sora Luna, good morning. And Green Death, good morning. Okay. So let's just proceed.
I am a college counselor at George School in Newtown, Pennsylvania.
George School, Newtown, Pennsylvania. Okay, research team. Independent school or receives any kind of federal funding?
And my pronouns are she, her.
Oh, thank goodness. I was worried there for a second. I wouldn't be able to know.
And I'd like for our panelists today to introduce themselves as well. I'll hand it over to you all.
Yeah, you might want to start with, like, since you have a group here just saying go ahead, you might want to start with naming people. That always annoys me in things like this, where somebody says, well, who wants to start? Nobody wants to start, or nobody wants to talk over anybody else in one of these things. You just have to pick somebody. Just go down the list and pick somebody. Organize this, would you please? Thank you, Matt Barnes. She said box. Yeah, box. Yeah. Oh, boy.
Jeremy, you want to start?
There you go.
Yeah, hello, everybody. My name is Jeremy Branch. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Enrollment Management at Penn State University.
If that guy doesn't do radio, I'd be amazed. He's got a great voice.
I am also the recent past president of the Pennsylvania Association for College Admission Counseling. It is so incredible to be with all of you this morning for this discussion.
We're counting them down. Okay. Next.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Peaches Valdez. I'm the Dean of Admission at Hamilton College in Central New York.
Hamilton College, Central New York. Okay. Again, my main question is, as we proceed, are they independent of federal funding, or do they accept any kind of federal or state funding?
And I use she, her pronouns.
Thank goodness. I'm glad to know that. That's going to become really relevant as we proceed, I'm sure.
Good to join you this morning. Thanks for spending your Saturday with us.
Kiever says, Bridget says it's a private school. Oh, which is a private school? I don't know. Hell Triangle says Georgetown receives $10 million per year for grants. Okay. Yeah, and again, the only reason I bring this up is the question of whether or not they are directly under the restrictions of federal law for accepting federal funds, since we're talking about checking the boxes, race, identity, et cetera, in college admissions. Now, obviously, if we're talking about, and I'm sure we are, talking about the phrase suddenly escapes me, the thing where where colleges are allowed, affirmative action. That's the phrase I was looking for. If we're talking about affirmative action, they're not necessarily breaking the law, but it all depends on how they apply it. So that's what I'm curious about.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kimberly Romero. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions for Diversity and Access at Elon University in Central North Carolina, and very excited to share a little bit more about ourselves and the college admissions process with you all today.
Yay.
Yat e bina, Tiffany George Inishia, Torich in Inishla, Ashahi Bashishin Tabaha Dashache Tatnazane Dashanella. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiffany George. I am a Senior Assistant Director of Admission at Brown University. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm coming today from the Nipmuc Nation out in Worcester, Massachusetts, but representing Brown University on the Narragansett Nation homelands.
Okay, so we got a land acknowledgement. We got pronouns. Boy, we're just running the gambit today, aren't we? Gamut. That's the word I was on. Gamut. I tell you what, waking up on a Sunday morning for me apparently is a tough one. Gamut, not gambit. Gamut. Gamut.
Thank you all so much for those introductions. And I want our students and families attending today to know that you can use the Q&A feature to pose some questions. We'd love for this to be as discussion driven as possible, and we'll do our best to get to all of your questions. But to our panelists today, let's start with some deeper introductions. Could you begin by sharing a little bit about your own college search and admission experience, and how did identity play a role in your own process? And why don't we start with Tiffany?
Yes, identity. Not your name, not who you are, but I'm assuming we're going to be going into the territory of what you are, what you look like, your physical attributes or biological, the inherited traits of your biology, right?
Yeah, happy to start. So I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation and grew up in Utah. I'm also the first in my family to attend college. And it was, I think, in the college search process, it was definitely a mix of trying to find communities where I would feel comfortable with, but also kind of meeting very high expectations at home in terms of like what they kind of expected of me as the first one to go off to college in the family. So it was a balancing act. I think I grew up in northern Utah, so not growing up on my own reservation, but I was very comfortable and familiar with not being in predominantly native spaces. And so I had the understanding that I was likely going to go to a college where I was often going to be the only native in the classroom, going to be the only native in different spaces. So I don't think that worried me too much in terms of the colleges I was looking for. But it definitely affected my experience when I was at Brown. So I went and chose Brown. I'm also a Brown alumna. And part of that choosing Brown was connecting with Native students who were there.
Why was it important for you to connect with Native students? Don't you go to college to sort of broaden your horizons?
And so I didn't know too much about Brown beyond it was a good school. It was in New England. It kind of fit what I thought in my dreams of what a typical East Coast college looked like and felt like.
You didn't know much about the college that you went to. You didn't do any research. I'm confused. It sounds like she was trying to look around and be very, for lack of a better word, discriminating in her choices for where she would go to college, but she doesn't know much about the college that she chose to go to. It seems kind of contradictory.
And it wasn't until I met Native students there that kind of brought the open curriculum to life, brought possibilities to light that I wasn't thinking about. And the Native students I met just seemed really fun and cool, and I just wanted to be friends with them. And that's kind of ultimately how I went with that choice of Brown. But
okay, so you wanted to birds of a feather the situation at your college, because why?
It in terms of like the identity piece of it and the
Yeah.
college application process.
Yeah, none of which anything you've just said before had anything to do with the college application process. Apparently you wanted to go to this school because you could find people who were of your same, I don't know, culture-ish. I mean, I'm assuming they weren't all from the same tribe that you belong to, but I don't know. Okay. Imagine if somebody said, I like to go to this school because of all the Anglo-Saxon people that I could connect with or something. Like, what would that say to anybody? Like, so what does that say about you?
I don't think it played too much a part into who I was, because I was very familiar with my Native identity, with my cultural background. And so sharing that in the process came, I think, pretty natural to me in a way that it might not be for many students.
What relevance does it have, though? That I guess that's my question. In the process, what relevance does your quote unquote identity have? What? Okay. So what weight in the admissions process did Brown University give to your identity? That's really the only question that I see relevant here. If we're talking about the admissions process and quote unquote identity, how much weight does your identity play in the admissions process? And however much that is, should it? Thank you, Hell Triangle. I was a double major, nursing and exercise science. My nationality played no part in the science required for both of these majors. Amazingly enough, your nationality, your ethnicity, your race, and so on, so far as I can tell, in most instances, has no determinative weight in anything when it comes to academics, skill, and so on. So as far as the admissions process is concerned, again, and I'm going to repeat this probably several times, of what weight, of what difference was it that you were the identity that you were in the admissions process to Brown? Or, fill in the blank with any of these other schools. Okay, so that's it. That's your story. So at no point in the admissions process did your identity come up as part of their decision-making to bring you in? You were comfortable talking about your background, your ethnicity, your identity, and so on. Okay, great. So?
Thanks for sharing that, Tiffany. Why don't we hop over to Kimberly?
Yeah, so my college journey it was very ingrained in me from a young age. My parents immigrated here from El Salvador in Central America. So they always said to me this phrase of, we can't really leave you a financial inheritance, but we can inherit you with this value of education. So it was always on my forefront of going to college. It was a matter of just how are we getting there and how are we paying for it? Mm-hmm. So throughout my high school years, I was presented with the opportunity to actually join a college access and success program at Elon called the Elon Academy. So I spent my high school summers living on campus and really embracing the journey and getting to know a little bit more about what I had to do to prepare for that moment of my senior year. And then all these great colleges were on my list. I was so driven to do well and get admitted to as many as I could. So I think I sent out maybe like 40 applications in my senior year. I had a lot of yeses, some nos, some defers. So it was all a learning process. And my parents along the way were very supportive, but it was also just this matter of they hadn't received a traditional 4-year residential college experience. So it was more limited in that kind of support that they could provide on that side. My mother was also under temporary protected status. So filing for financial aid was also another kind of interesting thing to navigate, of gathering all the financial documents, the W-2 forms that you need for your FAFSAs and your CSS profiles.
What does any of this have to do with identity in the admissions process? I'm waiting for it.
So it was interesting to navigate that and gain those as a first-gen college student as well. And I had a little brother at the time who was also very observative and taking account of all of this. And he's actually a senior this year, so it's very helpful to now be able to guide and help throughout that process. But ultimately, I kind of took my identity into account in selecting my college by looking at a couple of different things.
Okay. So you took your identity into account when selecting a college. Okay, and I'm not trying to imply that that's what she's saying here, but that has nothing to do with the admissions process. That's not the college evaluating you using identity as an assessment factor. That's you, I guess we'll find out in a moment, using your identity as a filtration tool for choosing a college.
One of them was primarily that I'm a Latina woman.
Uh-huh.
So I'm looking at what other resources are there for Latinx and Hispanic students.
What does that mean? What special resources do you require because of your gender and your ethnicity? I would love some clarification on what she's talking about.
And then safety was another matter that kind of was on the forefront of my mind as a young woman on a college campus. I was interested in knowing more on that side of things. So I ended up selecting Wake Forest University here in North Carolina. A really great experience, certainly a predominantly white institution, which was also interesting to navigate and certainly relate to those moments of being that one student, one of one in many classrooms, and having to be that person sharing the diverse perspective on a certain topic. So it was
the diverse perspective on a certain topic. So you're uncomfortable around too many white people because you just know more than they do about certain things. Okay.
Interesting to navigate it that way.
Interesting. There are several very diplomatic words in the English language, and interesting is one of them. Fascinating is another one. Remarkable is another one. You're not actually saying anything. You're not actually giving any kind of, quantifiable value or judgment of something. You're being very, that's interesting, right? Can go either way. So when she says it was interesting navigating this, I'm like, what does that mean exactly? You're not telling me anything. I can't tell if that's a positive or a pejorative. It really says nothing. The fact that she keeps repeating it is very interesting.
But on the scholarship side of things, it also was something that I was keeping in my search bar of scholarships specific to my identities. So certainly recommend taking all of that and reflecting as you navigate your own college process as well.
Scholarships specific to your identity. Yeah, so scholarships specifically aligned to your, I'm assuming, gender and or ethnicity and or race or whatever. Yeah, that's kind of how scholarships work. If you possess some element that the scholarship is aimed directly at, of course you would go after that scholarship. Unless you're, I don't know, trying to get support for your education based on your own merit and not weighed on anything that has absolutely nothing to do with merit, but you do you.
Thanks for that, Kimberly. Peaches?
Sure. Thanks, Catherine. So I share a lot of experiences with Kimberly and Tiffany have already gone. So my parents immigrated from the Philippines. They were educated in the Philippines. They immigrated here. And so similar to Kimberly's comments, education was an automatic next step. Wasn't, uncertainty as to what that type of school would be, but definitely high school was not going to be my terminal degree. And so I have an older sister, and during that process, I traveled a lot as any younger sibling would, going to a lot of colleges and universities and taking a lot of tours. And she was looking specifically at small liberal arts colleges. And that was something I did not want to look at.
What's wrong with a small liberal arts college? What's wrong with that?
I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. My town was 4,000. I wanted a large, I grew up in Pennsylvania, So actually, I was looking at Penn State. I was looking at schools like University of Michigan and Notre Dame and Columbia and NYU. So for me, like starting the college process, it was very much the opposite of what my older sister and my family thought I should be in. They thought smaller communities would probably be better. You know, in the end, after doing a lot of soul searching and reflection, I ended up looking and focusing on small liberal arts colleges. I wanted.
After a lot of reflection, I decided on a small liberal arts college, even though I didn't want to go to a small liberal arts college. Okay.
The things that I appreciated about high school, having close connection with teachers, having a good cohort of friends, being able to participate in a lot of activities and be involved and seek leadership, all of those things played a role in my college process.
Not a judgment on her decision making or anything else. For myself, just anecdotally, my first and foremost consideration when trying to choose a college was, could I afford it? Could my family afford it? Kind of thing. And that was about it. I was very pragmatic about things. I had a very sort of utilitarian outlook on the whole process, because I knew, or at least I should say from my father and other people I knew in my family and life who had, gone to college, etc., that unless you're going into something exceedingly specialized, excuse me, then your college diploma probably is not going to slot you in specifically to whatever you go to college for. And I knew, given my quote unquote skills, talents, and limitations, I wasn't going to be going for some kind of biochemistry degree, or some kind of, structural engineering degree or anything. I was going to go for an English degree because I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. So my assessment of like, where should I go to get my English degree? it really wasn't some kind of big, long, arduous search. It was basically like, what college can I get to, and what college can we afford? The end. So, that's just been my experience.
In terms of my identity, that played a role as well. As I said, I grew up in a really small town where there were very few families of color. So growing up with very much in a very strong sense of my cultural identity, being Filipino American, speaking the language at home. For me, I wanted that. At the same time, I had never experienced it with a large population.
And again, I'm waiting for one of these stories to say, during the course of my college admissions process, my identity came into play because X. I haven't heard that yet.
The idea, so it was this weird sense of cross-cultural struggle of like being in predominantly white communities and being able to navigate that, but at the same time wanting to be in a place where my identity was going to be valued and celebrated. So
the world doesn't revolve around you and your identity. And everybody who's white does not have the same identity. I mean, I just love this sort of like backhanded, everybody else is exactly the same, I'm special. Right? There's nothing unique about anybody who looks the same or different than me. They're all one big monolith. Whereas I need to have myself affirmed and celebrated, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if I see two people walking down the street who happen to be the exact same skin color, well, obviously there's nothing to celebrate there. They're exactly the same. I wonder what our speaker would think if someone said something similar about, just Asian people as a monolith. Someone going to a school and saying, I really wanted to have my identity celebrated, and it was kind of interesting having to navigate all of these Asian people. I wonder if that thought has ever crossed our speaker's mind.
In the end, I applied to schools outside of Philadelphia. I had relatives there, and I think, for that was something was really important, having family at least accessible should something happen.
Sure.
I also, for me, as being, a young woman of color, I wanted to have strong mentorship. I had I had mentorship in my family, but I wanted to be in a community that really embraced that. And in the end, I ended up applying early decision to Bryn Mawr, which is outside of Philadelphia. And to me, it was an amazing experience.
What? Okay, why do you need special mentorship because of your gender and or your race? And I'm I'm not trying to be facetious. I don't know from her perspective what that means. Why does she need mentorship because of those elements of her makeup? Why do those two things require special mentorship?
It was a place that there were more people of color I'd ever seen before, even though it is predominantly white institution.
That's very important to you, apparently, what everybody's look is. You talk about identity, but then you amalgamate everybody into very specific boxes of race, which says nothing about someone's identity. But, whatever.
There were more students of color there. There were people who spoke my language,
Ah.
and there were also faculty members. And to me, that was something that was really important, that I was automatically embraced by faculty members, by students who shared identity and cultural connections with me.
Okay, now the whole sharing a language thing, that to me is separate from all this other surface level aesthetic stuff. That is a mark of a connection that you can have with someone that goes beyond just, again, the look. Whether they look like you or not. You ever see, there's this YouTuber, he's famous all over the place as far as I can tell. I'm probably going to mispronounce his channel name, Xiaoma or something. Anyway, because it's relevant to all this, he's a New York City white kid who has an amazing facility with languages. And he walks around New York and speaks, obscure dialects of Mandarin to native speakers, or obscure dialects of African languages to native speakers. And the whole sort of gimmick of his channel is that so many people are shocked to see someone outside of their aesthetic race and or ethnicity speaking their language, sometimes very fluently, sometimes they say better than their own children speak it, that kind of thing. So being able to speak a language and having a connection with someone in that way, I can completely understand that, right? At least abstractly, because I haven't had to deal with that myself directly. But beyond that, which is an actual, element of knowledge and skill and merit, might I say, everything else he's talking about is irrelevant, or should be irrelevant. And still, to this point, nothing of what she's talked about has had anything to do with her admissions process. It has everything to do with, as every other speaker's talked about so far, in one way or another, it had to do with their decision-making of what school they wanted to go to because of what they are versus the people that were at the school and what they are or were. Just...
So it played actually, at first when I thought about it, in the college process, it probably didn't play as a significant role, but...
Yeah, okay. Well, then I guess we're done with this presentation, aren't we? Because out of 3 of 4 speakers so far, their identity, their race, did not play a single element in their college admissions process. It seemed to play a big part in their college selection process, but that's not the same thing, is it? So why are we here?
As an entering senior in high school, it became even more apparent of what I wanted in a college education. I wanted it to be very different. It was actually also the focus of my college essay, the important big college essay. I talked about where I was growing up and why I needed to be in a community that valued diversity. And
why am I not surprised?
Valued what people were bringing to their table, regardless of what it was, the importance of difference in building these communities. So I think that in the end, as I think about it, it played a significant role. The cultural connections I have, my parents' upbringing, their focus, all of that came in when I was applying to colleges. And to me, it was probably the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. It clearly set me on a path to where I am now, but in a sense of finding community within the Asian Pacific Islander community has even been reinforced being part of that. And a lot of it started in my college education. So.
And again, nothing of what you mentioned had anything to do with the actual admissions process. Okay. Thank you, Hell Triangle. Is this leading to college affinity groups? We're already seeing colleges create segregated dorms and segregated graduations. Yeah, I've done a couple of videos on this. There was Boise State, I think it was Boise State University, pretty sure. They had Black graduation and Oh, they had a whole type. They had a whole bunch of different subtypes of graduations that, no, they weren't. They weren't technically disallowing people who didn't belong to that demographic in, but it was for those people within that demographic. Very awkward sort of explanation. I've got that buried somewhere in my library. And of course, affinity groups. Oh boy, I've done more than a few videos on that subject, but. Yeah. So anyway, as to the title of the presentation, and I know I'm a broken record, but I just want to reiterate because I'm confused. If the title of this presentation is checking the boxes, race, identity, and college admissions, but none of the speakers so far have had anything to say about how their race and or identity played a role in the actual admissions process, are we going to be arguing that it should play a larger role? Are they the examples that defy the rule they'd like to have in place? I don't know. Okay, let's keep going.
Thanks so much, Peaches. And Jeremy.
Yeah, so my college search was all over the place.
We're not talking about college search. Did you look at the title of the thing you are joined to? Everybody, okay.
It was crazy. And I think I was originally kind of put some fear into my parents because my sister's 6 years older than me. And she was one of those people who at 14 said, oh, I want to go to college. I want to be a nurse. And then she went to college as a nurse. And now she's 43 years old. And guess what she is? She's a nurse.
That's actually not very common. I mean, at least, again, anecdotally. There's nary a person I can think of in my immediate life, in real life, who ended up in the vocation or industry that they went to college for. Because oftentimes life throws you curveballs and everything. I'm not saying that it's impossible, obviously, but at least in my experience, it's not very usual. So, I mean, if that's what she wanted to do and she's been doing it the whole time, well, good for her. I mean, I would have loved it if I'd found a very specific direction to go into in my younger years and found it. But I've never had that sort of very specific goal in mind or passion. Something that I sort of sidewise regret not having, but I don't really have a lot of control over it, I suppose. My sister Scribe, she had every intention of going into broadcasting and media and stuff like that. And for a brief time, she did get involved in that. But life happened, things changed, and she ended up in completely different places. For her privacy, I won't say what. It's nothing salacious or anything. It's just a very different industry. Yeah. So, I mean, good for your sister. Thank you, Chicago Mike. I love Zoom calls when I feel like we're watching the Brady Bunch. Yeah, when I was trying to make the thumbnail for this, I had thought about trying to make some kind of Brady Bunch arrangement, but I couldn't get the sizing right and there weren't enough people involved to make it look that way. If I somehow come across a panel discussion that has, I don't know, 9 or 10 people on it, I don't even know if I'd want to watch that kind of discussion, but if I do in the future, my intention is to make some kind of Brady Bunch thumbnail. If I can pull it off. Not sure. But yes, the thought had occurred. So great minds think alike. Thank you, Chicago Mike.
Right. And so like my sister was like she was on that path, man. And then here I come and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where I belong, what I want to do.
I was right there with you, and to a large extent I still am.
And so I think like a lot of people, and Peaches kind of talked about this, I fantasized about large at first, right? Because I'm a sports nut. And when you're watching those football games on Saturdays, when you're tuned into the NCAA tournament in March, a lot of those schools that are like deep in the playoffs or deep in the Final Four, they're typically larger schools, right? And so I fantasized about that. But about halfway through my senior year, I had this awakening. I was visiting some of these college campuses that were on the larger side that I was admitted to, and I didn't feel as comfortable as I thought or as I expected. And this threw me for a loop, because if that's not what I want, then what in the world am I doing? What do I want?
Yeah, amazingly enough, at that time in life, your expectations and your dreams for yourself do not necessarily meet up with reality. It happens to everybody. Okay. So what does this have to do with the admissions process?
I started to really wonder about that. And it was at that point in time, like you sit down, you have this fuller conversation, more of an honest conversation with your family and people around you. And I started to realize, like, I think I belong in a place that's smaller.
Great. That's really exciting. And yeah, as Hell Triangle asked in the chat, what's the stuffed bear in the background? I don't know. Is that like the school mascot? Was he at one time the school mascot? Is he a furry? I don't know. I don't know, but it's there. So it's there.
And so not only did I wind up eventually attending a university I never planned on attending, which was Penn State. I grew up hating Penn State, and all of a sudden I attend Penn State.
Why did you hate Penn State? Was it a sports thing? I don't know.
But I wound up attending a smaller Penn State campus and graduating from a smaller Penn State campus. So it's just amazing how this journey, where it can take you, which is also one of the, I think, the more exciting parts if you allow it to be. But when it comes to identity and where that plays a role.
Yeah.
If you had asked me this question, Catherine, 3 years ago, I would have said it not much.
If you'd asked me 3 years ago, I would have said not much. No, not asking about 3 years ago. I'm asking about your personal experience. So if 3 years ago it was not much, then it's still not much. But now on reflection, suddenly it plays a part. Okay. Are you talking about your selection process, or are you talking about the admissions process? Why are we here?
I would have said not much of a role at all. But over the last 3 years, I've had a lot more honest conversations with myself.
Okay. All right. Tell us about your grand personal epiphany.
I've done a lot more reading.
You've done a lot more reading. So somebody else has been telling you how to look at the world. Okay. What did you find? Or what were you told to see?
About identity and belonging. And a lot more professional development. And it played a larger role than I thought. I didn't realize, because I didn't have the vernacular. I didn't have the terms, right? I didn't have the education.
I'm sorry. Okay. I understand that it is not impossible for someone to learn more about how the world works and then take that new knowledge and reflect upon their own experience and find ways in which this new knowledge actually defines or clarifies previous experience. I'm not saying that's not impossible. Obviously, that's sometimes how learning works. But the way that our speaker is putting it right now, it sounds more like I was effectively indoctrinated to reassess my entire life based on these new principles. That's my interpretation. Just want to make it clear. That's my interpretation. He may throw that completely out the window here in the next 10 seconds, but that's my interpretation, the way he's presenting this.
But I was crossing schools off my list when people I felt paid too much undue attention to me. Like I always have a personal saying, you always know you're in a bad neighborhood when everybody in that neighborhood pays attention to you.
What?
Right? Like as you're driving down the street, when everybody turns around and pays attention to your car, you know you're probably in not the best part of town. It's the same on a college campus. As a student of color, a student of difference.
A student of difference. I don't think I've heard that phrase before. I'll try to log that away for future reference.
As you're navigating, you're walking down those pathways, you're walking across that quad.
Yeah.
If everybody's paying attention to you,
or if you're paranoid,
probably a sign that you're an outlier in some way, shape, or form. And
so you're going to run away.
I don't like feeling like that at a place that's supposed to be my home for the next 4 or 5 years.
It's not a home, it's a school. And so okay. We'll just take it on face here. Okay. So people were looking at you, and you know why they were looking at you. Not because you were an unfamiliar face, but because of your race. And if I continue on this track, I'm going to be a Dr. Seuss hack. Okay. But all right. So your overhyped sense of self caused you to feel uncomfortable around people who looked at you because you knew why they were looking at you, and they were looking at you because of your race. And so you decided, based on your interpretation and how you made yourself feel based on your personal projection of other people's motives, that school was not the one for you. Okay.
And so I was crossing schools off my list that gave me that feeling. I was crossing schools off of my list where it seemed like every student there looked the same or dressed the same.
So you were discriminating schools on the basis of the look of the population of the school. I wonder what our speaker would say if a white person said something to the effect of, I crossed those schools off my list because there were too many people there who didn't look like me. I wonder what word or words, depending on our speaker's, vernacular capabilities, would use to describe such a person. I would be very curious to know.
And that bothered me.
Uh-huh.
And so now that I'm a little bit older and wiser, it played a larger role than I thought.
And is that wrong? Were you wrong to do so? Was that an incorrect way of looking at things? Have you learned something from this, or are you affirming it?
It's been so interesting this fall talking to students and families that are just much more overt and communicating to me that is something that matters to them. And I'm a little jealous that they're that far along, but
you're jealous that they're that far along. That they're that far along. You see that as progress? You see crossing a school off of your list of potential schools to attend on the basis of the look of the population of that school as being far along. Okay. Got it.
I'm really excited because that's an important part of fit.
Fit. Oh, okay. You heard it here, but all that aside, what does any of that have to do with the admissions process? 4 speakers, 4 different stories, 0 citing anything in which their identity played a role in the admissions process. So either it played no role, it played a significant role they don't want to admit to, or it played a role that they have no knowledge of because the school made a decision without their oversight. So, okay.
Thanks for sharing all of your journeys with us. It was really, really interesting. And I think we're going to get to some more specific advice pieces later. I've heard some of that peppered into your responses about your own individual journeys. But let's talk a little bit about your institutions, and so we can share some perspective with our participants there. How is identity considered in the admission process at your specific college or university? Can you speak to that? And let's start with Kimberly.
Okay, we're finally getting to the point of the whole presentation's title. Also, Catherine Box, on the tiny chance you ever see this, you really need to turn your gain down just a smidge. Just a bit too high if you have that control. But okay, let's get to it. What does race or identity play as a role in the admissions process? Here we go.
Certainly. So identity plays a very important role in the admission process at Elon. In the information that we gather from your application, we're picking up on diversity in different ways. That can be your socioeconomic status.
Socioeconomic status is not an element of identity. Right? It's also not something that is as well determinative, but it's also a element of circumstance. which to me, depending on the situation, I'll change it up a little bit, can be an entirely valid thing to consider, right? Does someone have the academic merit, but does not have the financial resources to go further along in their education? That to me is a completely valid assessment process, because it should be merit over things that you have no control over, right? But it also should be merit over things that have absolutely no determinative weight to merit.
Can be your faith tradition. It can also be your race and ethnicity, one of the most predominant ones and probably most visible ones that would identify a student of difference. As Jeremy mentioned, I really like that phrase.
Okay, well, at least to her, that was a new phrase too. Student of difference. Boy, oh boy, a student of difference. I wonder if at any point it occurred to our speakers here that by coming up with phrases like this and everything, they are segregating students. They are segregating students from one another. There is a category of student that is here, and there's a category student that's over there. In their own minds, in their unconscious biases, do they understand what they are creating for themselves and everybody else that has to be subject to their own decision-making, as they are people in control of other students' destinies here? I wonder if it's occurred to them. But okay, religious or faith practices is what she said. You take someone's religion into account when you're admitting somebody to your college? Okay, is Elon a religious school? I don't know. I've never heard of Elon. I've heard of Elon Musk. I don't think that's his college, but Lord knows it might be. What does someone's faith practice have to do? I know it's not going to happen. Well, I shouldn't say I know it's not going to happen. I suspect it's not going to happen, that they will actually describe how a faith practice or how a race or how an identity plays a role in the calculation of admissions. The fact that she brought it up is interesting to me, though.
And then along the way, we're also kind of picking up traits of centers that we should put you in touch with after you're admitted. So our Gender and LGBTQIA Center for students within the communities,
Is my sexual orientation important to you in the admissions process? Do I have to disclose that to you in the admissions process? What business is it of yours? Okay. Again, I suspect it's not going to happen, but I would love it if one of our speakers would walk us through their admissions process, their assessment process. What do you look for? What carries weight? What carries more weight than something else? And on and on. Throwing these terms out there and these concepts is certainly interesting, but it doesn't tell me anything.
CREED, our Center for Race, Ethnicity, and Diversity Education, branched off of El Centro for students who identify as Hispanic or Latinx. So all of those offices have specific communication and specific people that you will connect with if you're admitted and if you want more information about that identity.
So wait. I come to the school and I'm presumably, let's say 18, 19, etc. Okay. I haven't figured out everything about myself at that age, certainly. But I'm going to put my faith in the school to educate me about my identity through their local chapters of support groups. I need to be educated about my own identity. Really? All right, that's interesting.
So we're picking it up in our reading process, which is right now we're in the thick of it, reviewing a lot of your applications. So we have kind of a reader form, and we're looking for a lot of different things in the diversity space. So
you're looking for a lot of things in the diversity space. So you're looking for things that have nothing to do with academic merit. Just want to make sure we're clear on that, because nothing she's talked about so far has anything to do with someone's abilities or skills. It's what you look like, what you believe, who you sleep with. All right. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for the Dog Cat Fox. Oh, smiley, happy Dog Cat Fox. What do you have to say about that, Dog Cat Fox? Wowie, wow, wow. That's right. Dog Cat Fox says hello. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk. Oops. And Mike Savage says Blarg. Because that really is, Mike Savage, I think, is basically our YouTube collective Groot. He only has one thing he can say, but it says a lot all by itself.
We make note of all of that, and we get you in touch with the right people on our campus and give you that opportunity to engage with those identities that you've shared with us. And of course, all the ones you're comfortable with. So we've added.
No. You said you are looking for specific things in your diversity assessment process or whatever, right? Okay. If I choose not to share any of those things with you, if it is irrelevant to me as to whether or not you know who I like to sleep with or what God I worship, am I off your list? If my only concern is that I get into a school that values my academic merit, do I not make the cut? Because you just said you are looking for things to fill out your diversity quotient or whatever. So students that go forward and just want to be assessed on what they can do and not what they look like, are they at all valuable to you? You just went 3 different directions there. Which is it?
Some questions into our particular area as well, asking if you identify as a first-gen student, while also including a definition of what that means.
What does it mean to be a first-generation college student? You're the first person in your family to go to college. What else does it mean? I mean, what?
And then on our end, we'll double check it with whatever education background you provide for your parents or guardians.
Okay, so you want to verify that I'm a first generation. Okay, what does being a first generation student net me, right? What would be the, and I'm asking, I'm not being facetious here, I don't know. What would be the motivation for me to lie about my parents' educational background in order that I say that I am a first generation college student? What advantage does being a first generation college student mean to the admissions process? Are you going to fast track students who say that they are first generation students versus someone who isn't? How much weight does that give their application process? I honestly don't know, but the fact that she brings it up that way indicates that it does have a significant weight to it.
And then we also ask if you're comfortable receiving communication from certain areas. Maybe you are not out to your family yet, but you are still interested in receiving that communication.
Why would I tell you? Why? What business is it of yours who I sleep with? And how much importance is it to the admissions process who I sleep with? I would really love an explanation to that.
In some way, shape, or form, we try to collect that along the way as well. So it plays a very important role in certainly presenting you with the right offices on campus. And
No. What role does it play in the admissions process? If I elect to share with you all of my personal likes, dislikes, etc., that's my choice. Fine. If I'm looking for some kind of support or some kind of resource in regards to those things, fine. That's my choice. That's not the question here. That is not the question here. The question is, what role does who I like to sleep with have in the admissions process? Did you understand the question you were asked? Did you understand the title of the presentation we are all here a part of?
Also putting you in touch with the scholarship opportunities that might be a good fit based on identity as well.
That didn't answer the question at all. The closest that we got was, what do we look for in the diversity space, or however she put it? And she brought up faith and sexual orientation and race. So you are discriminating students on the basis of at least those 3 things. but they don't have to share those things with you. I'm confused.
That's really helpful, Kimberly.
No, it's not. It is most decidedly not helpful at all. Not helpful.
I like hearing about not just how identity is captured in the process, but that connection piece to campus partners. That's so important.
That has nothing to do with the admissions process. She did not detail anything about the admissions process. Why are we dodging the admissions process in a discussion about the admissions process?
Peaches, can you speak to Hamilton's perspective on this?
Sure. I think my colleagues have already said this, have used this term already throughout, is the idea of fit. It's the academic fit, it's the social fit. We want to be able to be places that students are going to find a transformational experience, that they are going to thrive based on the resources that we have available for them. And so every school is going to slightly differ in terms of how they use that and what we are legally allowed to and permitted to use.
Yeah, the legal part of it is I have a smile on my face, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
But how do we best support students in general? And so for us, I think definitely we are 100% required residential campus. So it's for us, we value that experience of what the diversity of people are bringing in. Very similar to Kimberly, we use in regarding connecting students to resources. I think that's one of the biggest things. So
no, connecting students to resources has nothing to do with the admissions process. But at the point at which you are connecting them to resources on campus, you've already admitted them. Okay, that's not what we're talking about at all. And the fact that she kind of like grudgingly had to acknowledge the legal limitations of certain things, again, doesn't tell me anything direct, but it implies quite a bit.
For example, for being in New York, we have a program called the Opportunity Programs, or Higher Educational Opportunity Programs. They're specifically for aimed at students coming from New York State who are coming from maybe experiences where they are from historically and traditionally marginalized populations, where there is an issue of low socioeconomic status.
Okay, again, socioeconomic status is a circumstantial thing which anybody can experience, which says nothing about their academic merit. So that's fine. What else are we talking about?
If they are the first in their family to go to college, and it's additional. First
in their family go to college. Okay. Again, if that lends itself to socioeconomic status or opportunity, fine, great, okay.
Summer, it's summer academic support prior to your entry onto campus. So it's something that we take into consideration if you're from New York, or we've had cases where we've had students coming from around the world, and we're like, they have the potential, they already have established themselves as being academically successful. They just need a little bit of support in regards to how to access. I know that when I'm talking to first generation college students and even first generation American college students, the idea of actually going to a faculty member to ask questions causes worry, causes like students get extremely nervous. And so we have this additional program to help students throughout the process.
That is after they've already been admitted. What does any of this have to do with the admissions process prior to them becoming a student at your school? What mechanisms occur? What elements are evaluated in the admissions process?
Specifically for first generation students, we use it in the sense of we have a whole first generation program on campus for students that focuses on advising, that focuses on career planning.
You know what? And again, maybe this is just me, and I can only speak for myself. I don't recall. My mother and my father both went to college. Okay, before I was born, and so far as I also recall, neither of them ended up completing a 4-year degree. So I wasn't a first generation college student. Technically speaking, no. All right, but they had gone to college. Nothing in the course of my life had the fact that they had gone to college before me tell me anything about what it would be like to go to college. I mean, I guess the weight of circumstance on someone for being the first person to go to college, like I say, I don't know what that must be like, but I'm not quite sure also what it must mean that you're deficient in as a first generation college student compared to someone who isn't a first generation college student. What is the big difference? I mean, if it was some kind of thing where, my parents were like alumni at Yale and they had a whole bunch of like things that they could prepare me for, and you have to do this, and this is who you have to talk to, and that kind of thing. Yeah, sure. I suppose a kid coming into a college like that would have that as an advantage over someone who has no such connections. Okay, fine. But how often is that actually the case? I mean, going off to college for me was as alien an experience as I could imagine, just like going to any new school or something. My parents, having gone to college previously, didn't prepare me for anything in that regard. So maybe the whole concept of first generation student outside like I say, the sentimental aspect of it, I'm not quite sure why that is such a special category.
Getting them started from the very beginning and giving them mentorship through that process as well. I think it influences the types of, after a student's been admitted.
No, not after. Okay, this is really frustrating because I honestly wanted to learn, based on the title of this thing, what is the admissions process? I don't want to know about after. We're not here for the after. We're here for the before. We're here for the decision-making on the school's part as to who or who does not qualify to be admitted to their school. And based on the title, what does race, what does identity have to do with that process? Why do we keep talking about the after? Why do we keep talking about the support for students? Why aren't we talking about the applicants?
What types of opportunities to learn more about the college before they make that final decision? So is there one on student life, student activities, one's focusing on religion, religious commitments and faith and spirituality, which we've done, or the LGBTQ community. So again, it helps shape some of the programming that we offer students. But I think I would say, and I'm hoping my colleagues will agree with me when I make this statement, is that all those aspects of difference and diversity are extremely important, but the first primary thing that we're looking at is academic success.
The only thing you should be looking at is academic success, academic ability, academic merit. You're right. The first thing you should be looking at. Everything else is effectively irrelevant. Now, in consideration for who should come in, sure, socioeconomic. If you have two students and you have one who comes from a relatively well-off family and one who comes from poverty, but both of them have similar academic merit, and you're having to decide who to give scholarship opportunities to or who to give a possible academic scholarship to, yeah, I'd go for the kid who comes from the disadvantaged background. Yeah, okay. I'll grant you that. That is something that I'd take into consideration if I was an admissions person at a college. But who they sleep with, what God they believe in, what they look like, irrelevant. You're absolutely right. I am glad we have finally come to a point in this presentation where someone has talked about the necessity of academic merit and why it took 21 minutes to get there. Holy cats, man. Jeez. Are you kidding me? Hell Triangle, thank you so much. Sounds like they plan on recreating the character test that Yale created in order to remove their GPA/test standards. Might as well. It took 20 minutes to get to somebody bringing up academic merit. So how important is that really, if it took us this long to get there? Jeez.
Can this student be academically successful on their campus? And then we look at those other aspects and everything.
Okay, so first and foremost, your first filtration level is academic ability, academic potential. Okay, all right, great. And then you look at these other things. I made this observation a long time ago in one of my early videos where I was watching a panel discussion where they were talking about the they had a diagram up of this pipeline, right? And it was this job pipeline. And they're specifically talking about opportunities for women in the workplace and women achieving the C-suite or the executive level. And they showed this pipeline of the winnowing of, the population of women in your generalized workplace industry as you went higher up the chain of command in a business. And then they showed a diagram of the hiring process. And it was this funnel thing where you start off at the top with the largest pool of candidates, and then you winnow your way down to the final candidate. And the question I asked then, and the question I ask now is, where in the decision-making process is the gender filter, is the race filter, is the, in this case now apparently, religion filter? Is it at the beginning? Or is it near the end of the process? Because I'll tell you, wherever you have that filter, whether it's the beginning or the end, that's the problem. It doesn't matter. At what point are you discriminating student admissions on the basis of race or religion or orientation? I'm glad you brought up academic merit, but if after academic merit, you're then going to assess somebody on things that have nothing to do with academic merit, then you might as well not even have academic merit as a consideration. So I appreciate that quasi clarification of how they consider things.
Is read in context. So we look at the student in context of the community, in context of their school. So they may not be in a place where they they're a first generation college student. They didn't take standardized testing, but they're taking the most available, the most challenging courses. That's important to us. Like, it tells us that this student has this eagerness and this drive to be successful, even in the light of the fact that they may not be coming from a wealth of resources.
Okay. And if they happen to be straight, if they happen to be not a student of difference, do you then reject them from the admissions process over someone who has those qualities? I mean, you opened the door here. You just told us that the first thing you look at is academic ability, and then you assess them on all these other things. So there is a discrimination process set into your process. So I have to assume you will reject certain applicants based on things that have nothing to do with their academic merit. Otherwise, why bring them up at all? And why bring them up after academic merit? Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Quote, we see you'd like to apply for a general arts degree, but you failed to fill out the section called, where do you like to put your penis? Unquote. Yes. Yeah. It's, this is the part we have to listen to what people are saying and also what they are not saying. And the implications thereof. Now, again, I don't know what the process is. They haven't given us any active examples or hypotheticals. Like, if you had two students of equal academic merit, but one was straight and the other wasn't, what do you choose? I mean, the implication of what she's just said seems to me to say, well, we picked the student of difference. But, yeah.
So we look at all these things when we're reading into a student's file to know that once placed on our communities, will they thrive? And do we, in the end, is this a good fit?
Is this a good fit? Okay, so academic merit, get it out of the way early. After that, it's all these other things and whether or not you think they will thrive. If they're of one particular faith or another, if you think if you don't think that they'll thrive because of their religion and you reject them on the basis of their religion, is that fair? Are you qualified to make that assessment of someone's potential or future to be able to relate to others? Interesting. Okay. You're not a religious school, right? It's not like you're a Catholic school and someone comes in and they're a Wahhabi Muslim or something, and you're saying, I don't think you'd fit here. Right? What exactly are you talking about? Thank you, Point Curation. Hope everyone is having a nice weekend. I hope you are too. Point Curation, everybody. Artist from the Great White North. Public artist of the Great White North. Okay. Just as a timestamp, we got 15 minutes or so until I get to the hour and a half mark. We'll see where we're at in 15 minutes or so. If there's any reason to keep going, we're literally halfway through this entire presentation, and we just got academic merit mentioned. I don't know if there's much hope for the rest of this, but we'll see.
Thanks for that. Thanks for speaking to fit, and also the idea of academics first. And I think that's important as students and families are curious about your internal review, process.
Yes, I am curious about your internal review process. I thought that's what this is all about. But yes, you think that academic merit is important? Well, gosh, I'm glad that someone here does.
So that's really helpful. Jeremy, could you speak to Penn State? Is there anything different that you'd like to add?
Yeah, so not too much.
Oh, real quick, just got this. Thank you again, Point Curation. I made a sale via Imager. Happy about that. Hey, great. Put your, I don't have it in front of me. Put your Etsy store or store link in the chat here, and I'll highlight that. Guys, Point Curation does original pieces of artwork. They're really cool. He's got a lot of them. He puts on special discounts, like ridiculously amazing discounts on his stuff for people who watch these shows, and he's got all types of coupons for those. So once I get that, I'll put it up here and take a look. It's good stuff. All right, there it is. So let me, as soon as it pops up on, not Twitter, but YouTube, let's do that. All right, so hope you had a chance to look at Zalbla's GoFundMe, and if you have a chance now, go take a look at Point Curation's Etsy shop. All right, here we go.
We'll go along with what Peach said and what Kimberly said. We do a lot of identifying students through the funnel we talk about in admissions.
The funnel? I was just talking about a funnel. Oh, great. Okay. So where in the funnel is the religious test? Where in the funnel is the race test? Where in the funnel is the gender test? Where in the funnel is the orientation test? I'd love to know.
To get them in line and connect with programming and resources on campus.
No. That's after. That is after. They're already a student at that point. Stop talking about the after. We're not talking about the after.
Been prior to being enrolled as a student, to know that those resources are there.
Well, great. Hey, if you get into our school, these resources are there. Wonderful. What does that have to do with the admissions process?
But we are aware of it from an admissions decision standpoint, because we do have populations that are underrepresented at Penn State.
Such as?
And we pay attention to that. We talk about it each and every year. Like, what groups are we going to identify this year? Because we just don't have enough of these types of students on campus.
So you have a quota system for demographic fit. These types of students. I really hope when you say these types of students, you're talking about students who are focused on a particular academic pursuit, right? Could I hope? We need to find more structural engineering students. We need to find more biochemistry students. That's what you're talking about, isn't it? Ha ha ha.
And, a great example of that is students of color at our...
Of course it is. Of course it is. Okay. All right. Great. So is the racial filtration process at the beginning of your funnel or at the end of the funnel? Tell me where it is. Tell me where you begin discriminating your student population on the basis of race. Just give me which step it is. Is it before academic merit or is it after academic merit? Because here's the thing, either one doesn't matter.
Our largest campus, University Park. We need more students of color on that campus. I'm not going to mince words about it.
You know what? Here's the thing. I am glad he's not mincing words about it. I'm glad that the title of this presentation minced no words about it. I am amazed that it took to get to our fourth speaker here, our third speaker on this subject, until somebody finally said it. Until somebody finally said it out loud. Until somebody finally said what everybody here has pretty much suspected since we began with this thing. And it also says something that he has no problem not mincing words when he's an administrative official at a college. So there you go.
It's something that we need. And sometimes
Why? Why do you need it? And again, I know I'm Mr. Sarcasm over here and sardonic self, but I'm asking without facetiousness. In his opinion, why is it a need? What does that do? What does that mean to him?
the challenge of drawing students to that campus is not academic readiness or, demographics of any type. It's the fact
You just said you needed people of a specific demographic consideration. If it's not a problem, then why is it a need?
that it's in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania. And when you go west of, I'd say, I don't know, Westchester, right? It's a pretty rural state, right? And so sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge getting students of color to say, okay, I'm cool with that. Even though it's a beautiful college town, there's a lot going on. Sometimes it's a major culture shock. And so that's something that we give attention to.
Didn't we just have one of our previous speakers talk about how, I don't know, they came to a school and everybody was looking at them and they knew that wasn't the school for them because they didn't feel like they fit. And, right, it was this guy. It was this guy because he crossed schools off his list because they were schools that he didn't feel comfortable in because, but now we need to draw students into these places. Okay.
Also, things like women in engineering, women in STEM. We give attention to that. Identity spans a lot of different gamuts, right? Like it's not.
Gender is not an identity. Academic vocation is not an identity. It says nothing about who you are. Nothing. You could have a female engineering student who is a saint. You could have a female engineering student who's a serial killer. It says nothing about identity, at least identity as the phrase is used in the real world, outside of identity politics, which is all we're talking about here.
Not just, culture and ethnicity, but it's a lot of other things. And we need to see those numbers increase.
Okay, so how are you going to make that happen? How are you going to force, just as your example, female in STEM? Okay, how do you make that happen? If a girl comes to your school and wants to attend your school, but she's not interested in engineering or STEM, what if she's interested in writing? What if she's interested in painting? What if she's interested in nursing? And on and on and on. Do you reject her because her interests don't align with your necessity? I mean, that's perfectly valid to a certain extent. If you are a school focused on science and you have somebody coming in wanting to focus on liberal arts, then yeah, they probably wouldn't be the student for your college. In fact, if you didn't offer such a degree, then you'd ask yourself, why are they applying here? But okay, how do you make that happen? If you have 10 female students show up to get admissions to your college, and 9 of them are not seeking an education in STEM, do you reject 9 for the 1? Is that how that works? Maybe it does. I don't know. He hasn't said, but I'd love to know how he's going to make more female students in STEM come to his college.
We want to encourage young women to continue to pursue these areas of interest.
Whose interest? Whose interest?
Right. And so those are just a couple of the examples, like the finite, or tangible, the tangible examples of ways that we factor that in admissions.
Okay. I'm inclined to stop here because he finally said what I've been thinking they've been meaning to say this whole time and has been alluded to by Peaches sort of grudgingly having to accept there are legal limitations to their admissions process. But our speaker here, Jeremy, he makes no bones about it. Okay, well, there you go. I don't know. Do we want to listen to any more, guys? I'll take some input from you guys real quick. I'm inclined to just kind of wrap it up here, because if it took 21 minutes to get to academic merit, and then 3 minutes after, finally an admission, a different kind of admission, an admission about admissions, I don't know if there's that much more to learn here. But if you think I should keep going for another few minutes, put a 1 in the chat. If you think I'm fine to wrap up here, put a 2. It's fine. Let's see. Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Majority of teachers are female. Maybe they should have male teacher quotas if they're about equity. Oh, that's a good one. I wonder if, I don't know if any of these schools have a education program for teachers. I assume some of them must, but that's an interesting point. Let's see. I got a 2, 2, 2, 2. Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to say we're done here. If you would like to watch more of this on your own, link is in the description. For reference sake, I am at 24 minutes and 27 seconds on the presentation, and I didn't end up chopping off anything of the length of this presentation, so the whole thing is here. What did we learn? Well, we learned that in their own personal experiences, given an opportunity and a platform in which it would be completely relevant and interesting for them to say that their identity of various types played a part in the admissions process, none of them did. It played a part in one way, shape, or form in their selection process of what schools to pursue, but not the admissions process. But when we get around to the admissions process, well, we get some sort of couched implications in language from Kimberly Romero. We get some not very well hidden regretfulness over what they can and cannot discriminate on by Peaches Valdez. And then Jeremy Branch just comes out and says it. No, we're looking for students of specifics, racial, etc. demographics to bring into our school. Women in STEM, areas of interest. Whose interest? Yeah. So again, I can't read minds. I don't know the specifics of their admissions process at Elon or Hamilton and so on. We hadn't gotten that far, and they seemed almost reluctant to give us any more details. But it's suspicious. But Jeremy Branch, like I say, credit where credit is due. Right? I've said this a zillion times in the past when someone's just come out and said what they mean. There's a video. I brought this video up a million times in previous streams. If you do a search on my channel for unfiltered diversity, or just the word unfiltered, early on in my channel's lifetime, after doing a couple of dozen worth of corporate presentations on diversity programs and such, the Unfiltered Diversity Initiative, or whatever that video is called, very first time I ever had someone from a corporation stand up on a stage and make absolutely no bones about what they meant. It was both refreshing in a way to not have all this couched language as to what was being said or intended. It was also kind of disturbing that things have gotten to a point where there's no fear of coming out and saying, hi, I work at a public institution of some kind, or I work at a business of some kind, and I literally make discriminatory decisions based on race or gender or orientation or in this case, brought up religion several times. It's worrying to me that there's no fear about being honest about saying those things. I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad for the honesty. I'm glad for the candor. But it's also disturbing to me that it's seemingly not more disincentivized to do so. Because weren't we supposed to be moving past that at this point? After 50, 60 years of civil rights legislation, aren't we supposed to be at a point where that's not something you should be comfortable with admitting? or even celebratory of it. I don't know. Maybe I live in a completely different dimension, but I'll let you guys be the judge. With that, guys, I'm going to call it here. Oh boy. Thank you all so much for joining me on this semi roller coaster ride of academic chicanery. Hope you learned something. I kind of did. At least I learned something about these individuals, and by extension, maybe a little bit about the individual institutions they represent. Beyond that, can't say. But thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me for sure this next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for another installment of TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at another J-Random off-brand TED Talk. Will it be a good one? It does happen, as happened last time with Blind Press. If you haven't seen that one, go check out my channel. It's there. Also, I have started dangling my toes into the true crime genre. I have 2 videos up about that. Well, 2 videos and a supplementary video to the second video on my channel. I have just in the last 24 hours finished a first draft. I'm not done with it yet, but a first draft of my script for my 3rd true crime video. It's a doozy in complexity and events, which is why it took so long. A lot of research needed, a lot of fact finding and collating, and yeah, so when I get there, I'll get there. Can't give you an ETA, but it's there. Also, I should also mention, if you do not know about the channel Dave's Lemonade, and you like true crime, or you like trial court stuff and sociology, if you like the zingers of To Catch a Predator and those kind of things, take a look at Dave's Lemonade. That's the name of the channel. Just look it up there. As far as I know, he still doesn't have a Twitter account. I need to get him to get a Twitter account so we can start sharing stuff, and I can guide people towards him more directly that way. But Dave's Lemonade, he gave me a shout out on his channel yesterday. Really appreciative of that. And as I have since he was an early channel, I'm more than happy to boost him as well. Anyway, everyone, hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday. Hope it is nice where you are. I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.